Well, we went to Aston Villa to try and get Morgan Rogers, but we have ended up with Ezri Konsa. And yes, folks, it looks like the deal for Ezri Konsa is nearing completion at the time of recording. We've heard from all the respective journalists, the big ones out there, the David Orensteins, the Fabrizio Romanos, that Ezri Konsa to Arsenal is pretty much a done deal. Ladies and gentlemen, this is CJ from the Gunners Corner. So welcome back to the channel, and I'm just doing a quick little video on the topic of Ezri Konsa coming to Arsenal Football Club because we have to discuss it. It's massive. It's another signing through the door with less than 2 weeks left in the window. It's a signing we needed. So, without further ado, before I continue, maybe make sure, not maybe, definitely make sure, if you haven't done so already, like and subscribe and hype this video if you haven't done so already. We are a growing channel, so continue to show your support for us people, of course. But yeah, listen, we're back, and I have to report on it. We have to report on it. Ezri Konsa to Arsenal. Um, Now, this is a big signing. This is a big signing as far as I'm concerned, and I think Arteta and the club were right to make this move. The fee is reported to be around 50 mil, 51 mil with add-ons. We're still waiting for the final confirmation of that at the time of recording, but we're looking in the region of 50 to 51 mil. Arteta did push for the signing. Arsenal have had, sorry, a long-standing interest in Ezri Konsa for a while now. Um, and I think finally, with the Saliba injury, I mean, let's be honest, right? I think that's what really pushed this one forward, and that's what really pushed the signing over the edge is the William Saliba injury. And at first I said, why spend this much money, north of 50 mil, just north of 50 mil, right? 50, 51 mil approximately. Why spend that kind of money on a defender when you know that, we need reinforcements in attack? Our defense has always been strong. However, that's exactly why we needed the Ezri Konsa signing. The foundation of Arsenal's success over the last season and, previous years where we've done so well is the defense, right? The bedrock of our success, the heartbeat of Arteta's teams, and the foundations and identity in which we're built upon is Arsenal's defense. I think it's fair to say. And that defense has included Saliba, who has established himself as one of the best, if not the best, center back in the world at the moment. Generational defender is William Saliba. I'm not hearing any otherwise. William Saliba is the best around. I wouldn't swap him for any other center back out there, right? So naturally, with Saliba's injury, whoever you fill that position with next will always be a downgrade. There is not going to be anybody as good as William Saliba out there, in my personal opinion. So what we still needed though was cover. And at first I said, you're going to spend a lot of money on trying to bring in a player, trying to bring in a William Saliba replacement. Is it worth it? William Saliba will come back at some point. However, I don't think we can afford to rest on our laurels and wait and hope for Saliba's return because we're looking to go again this season. We're not looking to stand still. We're looking to repeat the Premier League, win the domestic cups, and win the Champions League ultimately, right? If we're looking to go again and fight on all fronts and, not waste any time and try and turn this team into a bit of a mini dynasty and again trying to, establish some success over the next few years, we need players who are going to help fulfill that for us, right? And again, William Saliba being out of the team at the moment, there is a big gap in that spot. And as I mentioned, the defense being the bedrock of the success that we've had in recent times, we don't want a big drop off. We need to sustain our success. We need to sustain our defense and make sure it's still operating at a high level. Now, you sign players like, Bruno Guimaraes to help add to the protection in front of the back line, and I can appreciate that because Bruno Guimaraes is, solid defensively, hard to get through that you look at that pairing of Declan Rice and Bruno Guimaraes, and you think that naturally the way we defend as a team, the midfield in front of the back four is important to that, and that midfield will be hard to get through, right? So that does add some defensive stability, some experience, some know-how. However, again, the back four itself, you need your center backs. Again, that core, that spine of Saliba and Gabriel have, I think, been massive to our success in recent times. And yeah, you want to bring in another competent defender, a defender who has the experience, a defender who you trust. And I think Ezri Kon's a shrewd bit of business if you really look on it now. Like I said, at first I was struggling with it, but now I completely understand why. I was watching preseason, our defense looked leaky. I understand we didn't have the midfield protection in front of the back four either during preseason as we were playing with Lewis Skelly as a lone six with like the likes of Kai Havertz and Ethan Nwaneri in front. I mean, again, that's not the most defensively protecting midfield out there, but again, you see that there are gaps, there are holes, And, we cannot rely, it's a quality and quantity thing. Let me just say that. You cannot rely solely on Christian Mosquera and Ben White and Jurriën Timber to do the business as our right-sided defensive coverage until Saliba returns, right? You're talking about a Mosquera who's young, still relatively inexperienced. Yes, last season was his first season in English football. Um, 21 years of age around there, 21, 22 maybe, Christian Mosquera. Relatively young and experienced. Are we going to put it all on his shoulders to go the first half of the campaign, let's say, playing all the Premier League games, the important Champions League games? Are we trusting Christian Mosquera with that responsibility and duty already to sustain the level of, challenging for the title and being in the title race until Saliba's return? That's a lot of pressure on the young guy, you know? And then when you look at, our right back situation, Ben White can also play center back, but Ben White himself is established himself as a bit of an injury-prone player in recent years. Knee injuries, muscular injuries. Can we trust Ben White to go the distance in both positions and cover in both positions until Saliba's return? And then Yuri and Timber the same. Again, relatively injury-prone in recent years. Now I think that's because we've overplayed Yuri and Timber and we've run him into the ground a bit. So now he's picking up these injuries. But again, he's not even fully fit at the moment. So quality and quantity. I mean, sure, some can say, yeah, we have Ben White, Urian Timber, and Mascara to cover the right side of defense slash right center back. But again, two out of the three of those, in Ben White and Timber, injury prone at the moment, and Mascara is young and a bit inexperienced still, I would say, at the highest level to play, the whole first half of the Premier League season and Champions League games to cover until Saliba is back. Again, how many points could we potentially drop in that time? With all due respect to Mascara and to those players who I just mentioned, we're hoping that we'd still be in a title race by the time that Saliba comes back. His impact, Saliba, is so big and so massive on this team that, with him out the side, you can see Arsenal dropping a lot more points and then, hoping that Saliba returns in the same condition, by the way, with a back injury. He's not even doing an operation. If he were to do a back operation, that would keep him out even longer. But with natural rest and recovery, which is currently the action plan for Saliba, when he comes back, who's to say that he'll be 100%? God forbid, if he comes back and he's still feeling pain and he's not recovered, surgery could be an option. And then what? We haven't signed anybody. So listen, it was always important to cover our bases. I do agree and believe in Arteta and the team strategy and the philosophy to bring an experienced defender in if we're going to maintain the high level of performance and get the wins, get the points, and keep the clean sheets that we need to maintain to go throughout the campaign. Like I said, until Saliba returns, because we all know once Saliba returns, he's back in the starting lineup if and when he's fully fit alongside Gabriel. Now, why again is the Ezri Konsa signing important in that sense? Because Ezri Konsa is a versatile defender. He can also play at right back as well. We've seen him do it for club and country. And so even if and when Saliba returns, Ezri Konsa can be covered at right back. And again, Ben White and Timber with their fitness issues and their injury issues, Akonza coming in and slotting at right back gives us that extra bit of assurance. I do think Ezri Konsa at right back is better than Mosquera at right back. Mosquera played right back for us in the Champions League final, and we all saw how that turned out. Obviously, he did as well as he could until he conceded the penalty against Kvaratskhelia that ultimately led to PSG's equalizer. Right, Konsa's played right back for again club and country. Brilliant defender, brilliant one-on-one defender. Saka's mentioned it previously in the past, and I'm paraphrasing that. Saka would like to train 1v1 against Ezri Konsa because he believes Ezri Konsa is one of the best 1v1 defenders around, right? And a lot of times in the fullback areas, defenders do get isolated in 1v1 situations. Again, Ezri Konsa deals with those really, really well. Fantastic one-on-one defender. And again, we've seen him play right back as well as right center back. And so when Saliba comes back, it's not like it's an issue where, you spend 50 mil on this Konza guy and, he's going to be out of the side once Saliba returns. Well, no, like I said, this is going to be a marathon campaign, not a sprint, as they say, right? Plenty of games, as we saw last season, plenty of opportunities for players to get the minutes, and the squad is going to be important. And so Ezri Konsa will get a lot of football, not just in Saliba's absence, but when Saliba returns, whether it's in center back, whether it's at right back. And I think that just adds to the strength of our defense all around. And now the important thing to note when it comes to Ezri Konsa, I just want to mention a couple quick stats for you. So as per Aston Villa Stato, which is the AVFC Stato account on Instagram, so big Aston Villa account. Obviously, Aston Villa, these accounts will know all about, their players Ezri Konsa has been a Villa player for a number of years now, so there's enough data out there to collect from a Villa perspective on Ezri Konsa and his statistics. And AVFC Stato or Aston Villa Stato has reported that um, Aston Villa had a 49% win percentage in all competitions when Ezri Konsa played, and that drops to 35.3% when he does not play. And in the Premier League, it's a 45% win percentage when Konsa plays and 28.1% when he does not. Off the Joe stats mentions 92.5%. Ezri Konsa had the highest pass completion rate under high intensity pressure of any player in the Premier League last season. Why is that important? Because Arsenal Football Club and Arteta like to play out of the back, right? Arteta likes defenders and players who are comfortable on the ball, who can keep possession for us. Again, it's part of, I think Arteta growing up in Spanish football and as a Spanish footballer, the kind of players that we like, the kind of players that he'll go for, the kind of players that are um, attractive to him are players who are technically sound, who can keep the ball, you trust them in possession, and so on and so forth. And we can clearly see that that's been a theme of Arsenal Football Club and the identity of the players that we sign in recent times, maybe aside from one or two, Victor Gyökeres, not to sorry to call you out, Vic, but yeah, let's be honest, not the most technical of players. But if you look at all the players around our team, the players in and around our team, certainly in the starting lineup in recent times, is technically sound players, right? Look at Trossard last season. Trossard versus Martinelli. Trossard got the nod more often than not because Trossard was a wide creator. He can keep the ball. He's got the football brain, so to speak. And same thing on our right side. Saka very technically sound. He keeps the ball very well. Doesn't just give the ball away and lose possession. And then you look across the team, similar, right? Odegaard, that signing of Zubimendi. Our defenders the same. Saliba, Timber, Zinchenko once upon a time, but now Calafiori, and all the way to our goalkeeper in David Raya, right? David Raya, look, again another player who's sort of the heart piece, the heartbeat, sorry, I should say, of Arsenal Football Club and how we build up from the back, how we play out. David Raya is basically the quarterback and goal. Why are all these things important? It's about keeping possession for Arteta and control in phases of play and important phases of play. And again, as Opta Joe reports, 92.5% is Ezri Konsa with his the highest pass completion rate and high intensity pressure of any Premier League player last season. So yeah, I think that's an important stat when you're looking at how Ezri Konsa can fit in our team and can he play out of the back, not just defend, right? In the modern game, it's can you play with the ball at your feet as well as being able to keep the ball at the back of the net. Clearly, Ezri Konsa is capable, and I think he will slot into this team in that way seamlessly. Ezri Konsa was dribbled past three times in the Premier League last season, just three times in the Premier League last season. Of defenders to play 2,500 minutes, only Virgil van Dijk was beaten fewer times. And this report was from Squawka. Again, Squawka, the Instagram account. Sorry, not Instagram, the Twitter account or the X account for those who call it X. I'm old school, I say Twitter. Again, as I mentioned, just speaks to the fact that he's a very good one-on-one defender, which is very very important in Arteta's teams in our defensive setup. And if you're looking to get a defender in that's in a similar mold to William Saliba, it's about you're never going to get William Saliba himself in terms of a replacement. There's only one William Saliba. However, you're not doing a bad job if you're getting a defender in who's of a similar profile, similar mold, and similar identity to William Saliba. Ezri Konsa, he seems like he is just that. Again, not William Saliba himself, but pretty similar in terms of profile of player, right? Um, Very hard to beat, as I mentioned, one-on-one. Very good defensively, very aware defensively, very good on the ball. These are all attributes you would attribute to Saliba himself. So again, not a bad way to go about it if you're looking for a stopgap or looking for an alternative to William Saliba in your defense for Arsenal Football Club. Um, Now, another thing we have to mention here, right, in terms of signings, a pattern of signings. So first, right, and this was reported online that I just saw earlier today, and I had to capture it to tell you guys. So first we went for Brentford's best goalkeeper, right, David Raya, a few years ago. Then we went to West Ham and took their captain and best player in Declan Rice. Then we went to Newcastle United and took their best player and captain in Bruno Guimaraes. Now we've just gone to Aston Villa and taken their best defender, or what, if not their best, one of their best defenders, and a very important piece to their back line in Ezri Konsa. What's the common theme there? And there's a few others, right? Crystal Palace, we went to Crystal Palace and we took Eze, arguably their best attacking player at the time, big pillar in their team. What's the common factor in all of these? These are Premier League proven players and Premier League proven signings, right? Alex Ferguson was very good at this once upon a time when he was in the Premier League, and it gave him massive success, was signing Premier League proven players that came from other Premier League clubs, going to other clubs, acting like champions, acting like a big club, and going to other sort of mid-table clubs and picking off their best players to add to his teams. And that helped give him success as a manager for Manchester United when he was in the Premier League, in the years that were under Man United's dominant era, right? The likes of Ashley Young from Aston Villa. Man United Fergie went and took Ashley Young out of Villa, brought him to United. The rest is history. Same thing with Antonio Valencia. Took him out of Wigan Athletic at the time, brought him to Man United, and the rest is history. There's so many other players that are examples of that. Berbatov, Carrick, pulled them out of Tottenham respectively and brought them to Man United. Again, the rest is history. They went on to win things with those players in the side. Why is that important? Why is that relatable to what I just read to you about the players that we took from these other clubs, these Brentfords, the West Hams, the Newcastles? Is because Arteta likes to do a similar thing, likes to sign Premier League proven players from these other clubs, from these sort of, lesser clubs or mid-table clubs, so to speak, signs these players, your Bruno Guimaraes, your Declan Rices, your David Raya's, Eze's, Ezri Konsa. Now take these players who are proven in the Prem, um, you know, and bring them to the Arsenal to help, build on the success that we're planning to go on to achieve, and the success that we've already had. You've seen Eze's impact and Declan Rice's impact since they've come into this team. I don't. Whilst I'm fully on board with signing players outside the Premier League, right? Wenger used to do it all the time. He signed a lot of foreign players, but signing Premier League proven players, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong in that sense because again, players that won't have a long adaptation period, players that know the league already, they understand the physical demands as well as the technical and tactical demands. Um, they understand what it takes to compete in this league, and you're bringing good players that can go up another level once they leave their respective clubs and go to the champions, for example, right? Arsenal Football Club, we are the Premier League champions. Let's not forget that. So it's a win-win situation, right? These players will come in to help Arsenal Football Club because they're already established in the league and they know the league, so the adaptation period is not very long. But you believe that these players can go up another level, right? Maybe there's a certain ceiling at Aston Villa for the likes of Ezri Konsa. Now, what does going to the Premier League champions do for your profile as a player and do for your career in terms of the level raise, the level that's being raised, right? You're training with better players, you're playing at higher level, playing more games under a manager in Arteta, a brilliant manager who's just won the Premier League. And you hear a lot of players that wax lyrical, right? A lot of the Arsenal players that wax lyrical and talk highly of Arteta and his intelligence and understanding of the game. So it's only going to improve Arsenal Football Club and it's only going to improve Ezri Konsa as a player, and his profile will go up. So, it just makes a lot of sense in that instance. And the last thing I will say on it is, we have to cover this. Ezri Konsa played 34 matches for Aston Villa in the Premier League in the 25-26 campaign. Um, 34 matches. Now, why is that important? In the Premier League, it's a 38 game season, and if you think about what listen, the best ability is availability, right? So if you think about what is important, not just from, the quality standpoint, and when you're looking at players and when you're, judging and recruiting players, it's not just the quality, it's the durability. Availability is absolutely the best ability. What good is signing a player if they're never fit for you? We've seen that so many times at Arsenal Football Club over the years, as recently as Tomiyasu. Brilliant defender on his day, just never fit. So what good is he to the team and to the club if you're a good defender but you're never playing? You're just collecting wages and you're in the treatment room, not on the football pitch. Ezri Konsa, has been a very durable player. Listen, knock on wood, I hope I don't jinx it. Typical art commentator's curse or content creator's curse in this case. I hope I don't jinx it when I say that, but listen, yeah, Ezri Konsa, very fit, very durable player. Again, 34 matches out of 38 for Villa last season. That's a very good return. And he has had similar returns in previous years throughout his career so far at Villa. So he plays a lot of football. He can get through a lot of heavy minutes. Um, which is important for us fighting on all fronts. And I think that's one of the bigger things that we're not speaking about in terms of why this player is perfect fit for us and for Arsenal Football Club. Again, in the absence of Saliba, is the fact that he's very durable. He can play a lot of matches. He stays injury free for the most part. Bruno Guimaraes is a similar situation as well, right? Very durable players. It's important to bring in players that can go the distance and have the durability, certainly in the Premier League, because we're going to need them. A lot of times we saw Arsene Wenger, he used to sign, and especially in the latter years, sign these players who were injury prone, right? They come to the club and they already have injuries. Famously Kim Kallstrom, who had apparently a broken back when we signed him for Arsenal Football Club. Like, can you imagine, right? So it's important to do your homework and your research. And listen, I believe Arteta and the club have done that. And I think this was absolutely the right way to go, absolutely the right thing to do. You sign a Premier League proven defender. We need somebody to come in while Saliba is out because his return date is unknown, and we can't afford to wait and rest on our laurels if we're still going to compete on all fronts for all the big trophies again this season. We saw certainly in the Premier League, last season and seasons gone by, how important it is to get off to a good start. You don't want to be playing catch up early doors. And so Saliba could return in the second half of the campaign, but where will Arsenal Football Club be in the standings, in the rankings, in the Champions League? By the time Saliba returns. You can't wait and hope around for that. We need to have a good start. We need to have a fast start, and we need to, continue where we left off. And the signing of Ezri Konsa, I think, does just that. It helps us continue where we left off. Naturally, there is going to be a bit of a drop off because, in my opinion, and in most people's opinion, there's not too many as good as Saliba out there. But again, you can't do too much wrong with Ezri Konsa. Um, with Ezri Konsa, with everything that I just explained in this video, as to why that's a very shrewd bit of business, 50 mil. But listen, in a market today nowadays where everything's inflated, you'll take that for a defender who's durable, for a defender who has quality, for an England international, for a defender who's versatile, who can also play at center back and right back. No problems with it. Just get it done, get it through the door, act like champions, and we've done that. Brought him in ahead of the end of the transfer window. And I think it's a good bit of business, and well done to Arteta and the club for getting it done. It was absolutely the right thing to do, whether you thought so or not earlier on in the window. Again, when you look at the right side of our defense, a young Christian Mascara, um, an injury-prone Ben White, and an injury-prone Timber. Very light in that right side of defense. Ezri Konsa comes in and helps steady the ship in that area and helps solve some problems in that area, as mentioned in the video. So, listen, big up the guys. Apparently, Josh Kroenke, sorry, was heavily involved and got involved in the signing. And that's a big statement, and that's a big sign to Arsenal Football Club, because once upon a time we had a problem with our owners and we had a problem with Josh Kroenke and Stan Kroenke. I think you're seeing in the last few years, certainly my eyes were open in this last 12 months in the last Premier League campaign with Josh getting involved. Josh being in the celebrations for the trophy parade, the Premier League parade. Um, how invested certainly Josh is with Arsenal Football Club now, and you can tell that he wants that same level of success for Arsenal, and for Arsenal to go one step further, and he's getting involved in transfers, and he's getting involved in negotiations and recruitment and talking to Berta, talking to Arteta. Very big sign, very big statement that I think everybody at this football club is ambitious and serious now, from the powers that be, and it's great to see. It's great to see. So let's see what we do for the rest of the window if we can get the attacking reinforcements in. But this is a great step in the right direction. This Ezri Konsa signing needed to be done. We got it over the line. Medical is in place apparently at the time of recording. The medical is set for Thursday, which is tomorrow. And so, yeah, very well done, Arsenal Football Club. Time to move on and get the attacking player or players in place ahead of the end of the deadline. We also have to move some players on, so let's see what we do. But Ezri Konsa through the door, well done, Arsenal. Massive signing for us, much needed. And let's see what happens in the end of the transfer window. Like, subscribe, hype up the video, as we always say. I've been CJ from the Gunners Corner, and we are out, people. Bye bye.